Hello there, welcome back to the Chucky Revisited series. We're on Child's Play 2. Child's Play 2 came out in 1990, 2 years after the original, and actually takes place 2 years after the original. Yeah, Tom Holland was out, and instead, John LaFia, good friend of Don Mancini's, took over the directing, the role of director here. Um, so, I made no bones about this that for the longest time, the first one was the only one that I had seen, right? And it wasn't until Bride of Chucky was coming out that I wanted to try to change that, but that didn't really work out. I'll mention it when I get to the third movie, but that didn't really work out. And then it was years later, finally, when the DVDs were out, that I finally watched this and 3, and then Bride and Seed. I had Seed, but I had the others. But uh, this one's always been a confusing one. Everybody says this is the best Chucky movie. It's the better of any of them. And to me, I say it's good, but to me, nothing has come close to beating the original. And why is that? Well, I feel like, the first film, Don Mancini didn't have a lot to do with it. He didn't like the voodoo stuff. His script was rewritten. It was darker. Tom Holland made it darker. Tom Holland could do horror comedies, but he made it more serious. And to me, I think when Chucky is more serious, I think it works out better. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love Bride of Chucky. Right? In fact, it's pretty high up because I like that. But it has a darker tone to it thanks to Ronnie Yu, who also did Freddy vs. Jason. It has a darker look, I guess you'd say, not tone, a darker look into it. And then I love Curse of Chucky because it also goes back to that darker roots. I don't mind the comedy. I really don't. And this is far from what the franchise would be by the time the TV series came along. But this is when they started adding the comedy. And like I said, while it's not bad, I think it's overrated. I'll say that. I think it's overrated as a film. I think it's overrated, and I think people need to get off their high horse about this. In my opinion, it's not the best. It's one of the good ones, but it's not the best. The movie starts with saying 2 years later, the Play Pals toy company is rebuilding the doll because they want to make sure that no lawsuit can be happened. Mr. Sullivan, Mr. Shove It Up Your Ass Sullivan, Stick It Up Your Ass Sullivan, has set this up to rebuild the doll to make sure that there was nothing wrong with it so that they can't be sued for what supposedly happened in the first film. They say supposedly because 2 years later, and no one really believes Andy. The cops, Norris and Mario, they did not speak up, although Karen did to defend her son, and for that she was put in the nut house. And there was supposed to be a court scene that brought back Chris Sarandon and Catherine Hicks, but that was nixed. But my biggest problem with this whole thing of she stood up for her son and was called a nut because of it, now she's in a nut house, is there is fucking evidence all over that apartment of the doll being alive. There is blood on the doll, in the doll, around the doll. You check that blood, it will come up Charles Lee Ray. And I know in 1988 they didn't have that kind of stuff, but still, come on. There has to be some kind of way to prove that he's right. There's DNA evidence all over that place that the kid is right. The doll covered in human blood. and it's glossed over because they. And that also kind of bothers me is that the only reason they would bring Catherine Hicks back. I always thought that she didn't come back because she wasn't able to. But turns out she was. They just, even if when they were going to have her come back, she was going to be written off. And I don't understand why. Why that. I don't know. And she was even on set because her husband, or soon to be husband, Kevin Yeager, was still doing the effects. So, yeah. I don't know. But now Andy is in the foster system. He's in the orphanage. He's going through the foster system. He's being picked up by Phil and Joanne. I don't know the actor who played Phil, but Joanne is played by Jenny Agutter from American Werewolf in London. And she is just dipping in and out of her British accent here. I mean, you listen to her dialogue. She's going in and out of that like it's a drunk driver going. She's just, oh my. I want to know who it was that thought she was doing a good job of hiding her accent, because she wasn't. She's a good actress. She's good in this, but her accent just keeps going in and out and in and out and in and out, and yeah. So, how the doll comes back to life here has always been confusing to me. It's like, they have this whole doll put together except for the eyes, right? They go to put the eyes in and the machine just stops. And they can't get it to work, and once they do, there's like a big electrical shock that kills the guy who's doing it, and you hear a scream, which is Chucky's scream. And no one asks, what was that scream? Because it clearly wasn't the guy who got electrocuted. But then Mr. Shove it in your ass, stick it up your ass, Sullivan says, just, forget about it. We're gonna cover this death up. And when he asks, what do I call him that? Because when Greg German's character here, Mattson, says, what do I do with the doll? Sullivan turns to him and says, stick it up your ass. So yeah. So Mattson here is calling his girlfriend / wife, whatever, and he forgot the vodka, so he goes to a liquor store that only accepts cash. That's not legal. That's not legal. I don't think that you have to accept all forms of payment, I think. Some people don't accept checks. I get that. But he's got a gold card here. And they're like, nope, only cash. I'm just like, what was the point of this scene? The only thing it does is that this guy is distracted so that he can so that Chucky can use the car phone to call Grace Poole at the orphanage. Somehow Chucky knows what orphanage that Andy went to. 2 years after the events. Yeah, 2 years after the events of the first film, he knows exactly where Andy is, and he calls her up. Before I go on, let me go back a little bit. So, how is, again, like I said, Chucky coming back is confusing. How is he brought into this doll? The third one explains it more of how Chucky comes back, although there is some hiccups with that one. But how is he back? Because they used the good guy metal skull inside, right? Is that it? Because I don't know. It doesn't make any sense how that works. You know what else doesn't make any sense? This scene where Chucky calls the orphanage, talks to Grace Poole, and just by saying, I'm looking for Andy Barkley. Oh, Andy Barkley's not here anymore. He's been placed with a foster family. Oh, well, you know where I can reach him? This is his Uncle Charles. And she gives him the address. It baffles me. that that uh, that they would just do that. This movie claims you can just call an orphanage looking for any kid and say, "Oh, this is Uncle So and So," and they'll give you the information. That is not how it works. That is not how it works at all. Orphanages are very stingy when it comes to stuff like that, right? There's confidentiality stuff, right? They won't if you give a child to an orphanage, they will not uh, disclose the information of the person who gave the child, even to the child, because it's not, you're not supposed to know that. But then you also cannot give out it. They also cannot give out information on where the kid was adopted, Uncle Charles. And if you think about it, this lady is stupid, because if he had an Uncle Charles, that's where he would be placed in an orphanage. And do you think it would take 2 years after the events of the first film for a supposed uncle to come looking for him? Maybe. I don't know. But it just doesn't make any sense. Then he kills Madsen by suffocation. Pretty decent kill. But again, do we need to waste time? Like, again, we have the scene of Madsen going into the liquor store so that he can be distracted while Chucky calls Grace Poole. Why couldn't he just suffocate Madsen, then call Grace Poole? Did we need to have the liquor store scene in there? It adds nothing to the film. It has nothing to do with the plot. It's just there so this guy can be distracted, so Chucky can make the phone call. If Chucky wakes up, strangles the guy, or suffocates the guy, then makes the phone call, boom, we're off to the races. Right? Here's another issue I have with this movie. These are the worst foster parents ever. From the minute he gets in there, all they do is ridicule him about his fear of the good guy doll. Like it's such a bad thing that he's afraid of this, that there's trauma, right? Because they discuss it, oh, we don't know, it's such a heavy case, we could take it, and then they take him, and then they know what his trauma is, so they have a good guy doll in the closet, and they leave it there. They don't get rid of it. They never get rid of it. All they do is they bring it downstairs, right? This thing that traumatized the child, and they keep it in their home. Chucky eventually finds the house, kills the other doll, whose name is Tommy, named so after Tom Holland. Not that one, the director of the first film, but Chucky kills him, buries him in the backyard underneath the swing set, where everybody would be walking on, but apart from me, and then pretends to be Tommy. We are also introduced to Kyle, one of the great characters. If this movie has anything, it's that it introduces Kyle, and that she's a great character that we'll see in the TV show. And one little cameo at the end of Cult of Chucky, which is one of the only good things about that movie. That movie's so boring. But she's good here. She's the stereotypical, rebellious 80s teenager who smokes. I don't know why I said it with an accent, but yeah, who smokes and does what she wants and all that stuff. And here's something I learned. I was today 8 years old when I found out she was on Beverly Hills 90210 and dated Jason Priestley. Wow, there was a world before I was born. Well, this was after I was born. I was 3. But still. If only I was, if I was a teenager in the years, how that would be. One, I'd be almost 50. But still. I'd be over 50. I don't think about that. But So, cinematography in this movie is kind of weird. There's a lot of low, wide-angle shots. The blocking doesn't work. Like, there's a scene where Andy is coming out of the kitchen door and stops because he hears Phil and Joanne talking about the whole thing with the doll. He stops and he listens. The door is half open at this point. He is halfway through the crack. And, like, he just walks through after the conversation and walks off, and nobody says anything. At least Phil should have been able to clearly see the door open the way that it was, the way that he was standing there, because it just doesn't. If anything, the door should open the other way so he could listen and not look like the door was. I don't know. It's confusing. So, wasting only a little time, Chucky then bounds and gags a 7-year-old child, who was actually 8. Should actually be 8, actually. Unless his birthday hasn't happened yet. So, yeah. Anyway. So, this movie was actually supposed to take place at Christmas time, which is why there was all the Good Guy doll stuff that they're making. But anyway, so I think that's true. He bounds and gags Andy and is about to do the I Day Do A Dembella thing when Kyle busts in the room, climbing through Andy's window after sneaking out. This has always made no sense to me, as why wouldn't she sneak through her own window? The only reason she sneaks through Andy's is so that Chucky can get caught. And yet, after this happens, and after Kyle, I kept almost calling her Joanne. That's why Kyle gets blamed for this and says she didn't do it. She still doesn't get a clue that something is off here, right? I think at one point she even blames Andy for doing it himself. How the hell could he tie himself up like that? It makes no sense. The only reason that she doesn't catch on at this point is because if she did, then Andy would have an ally and the movie would go right faster. But, yeah. So, then we get school. So, again, this scene doesn't need to be here, but I like that it is. So they go to school, which is another setting they wanted to do in the first film, but they couldn't. Budget or whatever reasons. I don't think the school scene would have fit. The only time we see him go to school is when he skips in the first one. So I don't think it would have fit in there, really. So we meet Miss Catterwell, played by Beth Grant. Great actress. She likes playing bitchy characters. Have you ever seen Donnie Darko? I've only seen clips and pieces, but I've seen the Sparkle motion clip. And this bitch gets what she deserves. So first of all, Chucky writes "fuck you, bitch" on Andy's paper, so he gets detention. She doesn't call his foster parents in. She just says, "You get detention." Okay, I get it. But you would also have to call the parents in for something like this, right? Nope. They just need Andy to be alone here. So, yeah. And, like, she found the doll earlier and threw him in the closet, I guess. So he sneaks out. Or Andy throws him in the closet. He tricks Chucky to going into the closet, which is saying a lot with this franchise. But, sorry. I respect Dom Mancini. That was a crass joke. I'm sorry. But then Miss Catterwell goes to check it out thinking Andy's in there, and she gets beaten to death with a yardstick. But we get the great line. "You've been very naughty, Miss Catterwell." It's done off screen, but, I doubt your dedication to Sparkle Motion, bitch. Take that. You deserve that. Anyway. Yeah. So, like, and then this goes unmentioned the rest of the movie, because, yeah. It does. And then they find the smash thing. This is before, I guess. And he says, Chucky did it. And Chucky didn't do it. So that's when he throws him down the stairs. And then he tries to say that Chucky was responsible for other things. But then he sees he's still down the stairs. You know? So Andy's solution is to get the carving knife and go after Chucky. Phil stumbles in on him. And Chucky gets away. Chucky's not seen by Phil. But he trips Phil, hanging him upside down. We get another great one-liner. How's it hanging, Phil? So now he believes him, and then he gets dropped on his neck where it breaks. So far, not very much good kills. The electrocution was fine. The suffocation was good. And then you have the beating the teacher to death off screen, and now they're falling and breaking his neck. Joanne walks in, and still going in and out of a British accent, freaks out. You stay away from me. That's how it sounds. And so, even though Kyle doubts that this is what's really going on, Joanne is like, I'm done with this. My husband's dead. Get rid of him. So Grace Poole shows up, her personally, to grab him. I think she would have like she runs the place, right? She just leave the orphanage. I guess she would have underlings that can do stuff there, but yeah. So she picks up Andy herself, and then again the movie loses me because all Chucky would need to do is follow Grace Poole back to the orphanage, heal her, and then get Andy. But he stays around the house and kills Joanne off screen with her sewing machine, and then abducts Kyle. Kyle is probably about, she's taller than me, over 5 feet tall. This 3-foot fucking doll takes a pretty much grown-ass woman. Her dialogue suggests that she's 17. Yeah, sure. She was obviously in her 20s, but yeah. But this woman hostage with a dingy little knife. Again, we're supposed to not question this per the TV series saying it's the power of Damballa. Which, as much as that's sort of retconning stuff here, it wasn't a thing at the time. So, but yeah, this little dingy doll that's barely 3 feet tall, I mean for it to rhyme, takes this grown-ass woman hostage. They get pulled over by a cop, and Chucky doesn't kill the cop, they just pretend it's a doll. Oh, I love these things. What's your name? Chucky. Kind of funny. But yeah, and then he forces her to take him to the orphanage, where as soon as they get there, she does absolutely nothing, really. Chucky kills Grace Poole by using the copy machine while killing her, stabbing her to death, I think. But then once again gets a hold of Kyle, or gets a hold of Andy, and forces him to run into a delivery truck. Kyle cuts him off at the pass, but they run into the Good Guy Dolls Factory, which is a holdover from the original script of the first film too. Another one. And yeah, we get a pretty kick-ass final act. We get what is, I'll just say it, the best kill of the movie, I think. And that's when I think it's a janitor climbs on the machine and he gets the eyeballs in the face through his skull to death. I mean, I guess it would kill you, but I don't know. It's like, he's like, ah! And you get like the big doll eyes on a human face. It's funny. It's kind of funny. Oh, smack myself in the face there. But yeah. Oh, I forgot another funny line because at one point Kyle launches Chucky through the windshield. How a doll is that would break the windshield, I don't know. And then he yells out, "Goddamn women drivers!" I will say that Brad Dourif is coming into his own in the role of Chucky. He does bring the Jersey accent in there for some of the dialogue. So Kyle and Andy, excuse me, brain fart, find that the only way out is through a door, a back door. Why they can't go back the other way? I know there's a maze, but through this machine, there's a back door that you have to go through the machine to get to. Who designed this? Who designed this? I want to know because this is ridiculous. You have to go through the machine to get to this back door. So again, I want to point out that they're much like the climax of the first film. They waste time. I mean, it's fun to see all this, but Chucky gets like melted plastic poured all over him. First of all, he gets his hand cut off, pulled off, and he attaches the knife, which is kind of cool, little knife thing. But then he gets melted plastic, I almost said chocolate, plastic poured on him. Survives that. And so the only way that they stop him is by sticking the air hose in his mouth and it explodes. And even then, it, like, I think he actually goes through a machine too that takes off his legs. And then he gets the melted plastic. And he's still there. And then he explodes. And that, maybe the leg and the melted plastic are the same. I don't know. But, like, there's just so much in this. And I complain about this because much like with the third film, it feels like they spent most of their time with, like, all three of these Child's Play labeled films go very quick with the endings. It's like they spent most of their time with the finales that there's no time for a wraparound. So as soon as it's done, Andy and Kyle walk out, pull out, movie's over. There's no real wraparound. There's no cops showing up. You know, there's nothing. And that's what it feels like. They spent all this time on this finale that they didn't have enough time to do. We don't have time for wraparound scenes. Just end it. This is what it seems like. Another thing I want to point out before I go into my final stuff here is the score. Now, I know that they said when it came to the Chucky TV series, they were bringing it back to Child's Play 2. The design of the doll and everything, the feel of it, until season 2 when it went full Seed of Chucky. But I never realized that the theme song for the TV series was taken from the score of this movie. It starts at the beginning of this movie, and I go, wait a minute. That's the theme from the TV show. What? Never knew that. Never knew that. I still kind of prefer, I mean, I love the theme, but I still kind of prefer the music they had for the first one. That, you know, or whatever they had. I don't remember fully, but I like it. I like this too. I will give Chucky a birthday, or Child's Play. I'll give Child's Play 2 a pretty good. The solid acting. It looks really well done. Some of the cinematography is off. The blocking is off. There's just some plot points that feel like they're just trying to stretch the runtime out. And then, as a result, much like with the first one and the next one, there's no time for a wraparound. It's just over, done, and let's move on. Right? But, yeah. My favorite kill will be the eyeball. It's got to be. I know that's the same as Dead Meat to try to differentiate. But yeah, it's the I tried thinking of the kills, and Joanne's is off screen, Miss Kettlewell's is off screen, but I love the lead up to it. The execution is just too over the top and silly. Phil's is just a neck snap. Basically, he falls down, steps, and breaks his neck. So the suffocation is good, but never really cared for that one. Sullivan's is better in the next one. We'll talk about that. But yeah. And I gotta go with my one-liner of the movie, my favorite one-liner. Goddamn women drivers! Sorry, I'm gonna get the laugh out of me every time. There's some good ones like Very Naughty Miss Kettlewell. Amazing, isn't it? When he comes alive in front of Grace Poole. Has a hanging Phil. But for me, the one that gets the biggest laugh out of me, goddamn women drivers. How he says that, it's just great. It's great. So what are your thoughts on Child's Play? Let me know in the comments below. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Thanks for watching. I'm Scotty, and I'll see you in the next one.